Good evening and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show with me, Hugh Hattrick, and a very special guest. For once, we've got someone involved in real motorsport. It is Will Daniels. Good evening, Will.
Evening. How you doing?
I'm very well. It's great to see you tonight, and thanks so much for coming back on the show. You've decided to be brave and come back and give us an update on what you've been doing. But to give us an idea, I was sounding like how many different jobs you do, because I put that you're involved in motorsport. Just exactly. For the first question can be, how many different jobs do you have at the moment then, Will, in motorsport?
Currently a Formula One engineer in the wind tunnel. I'm trackside with Newbridge Motorsport with the Aston Martin GT4 in the British GT. I'm trackside as an engineer for the Mini Challenge series with Accelerate Motorsport, and I do some sim racing support on the side and some karting, mechanicking and race engineering, or various roles in karting. So I'm sure there's some other bits I've missed.
Yeah. And if you're involved in all these great ones, of course, you're probably not allowed to say which you prefer or what is the most exciting. But what have been some of the highlights of the year? Because it's been a pretty impressive year for you. But what's been some of the best things that have been happening in your career this year?
It's been quite a fortunate year. The two memories that come back are definitely the two championship wins. And the Aston Martin GT4 was a good championship win. Really enjoyed that. That was great with the team. But I think the Mini Challenge championship with Dan Zelos was the most exciting one, going into the weekend with a 4-point lead, bearing in mind that the championships are working in the 700-point region. We entered qualifying still with a 4-point lead after race one. It was a 1-point lead, went overnight, came back on Sunday morning. Race two, we were then down to a 1-point deficit in P2 from the first time, something like Croft earlier in the season. And then the final race, Dan managed to claw it back to I think a few point advantage by the end of the race. But I think that was the end of that race was special.
Wow, no, that's the thing. Now we've got one of the guys in the comments, Jerry, is saying that he was at Brands Hatch a few weeks ago, and I think he saw your team race there. So was that the kind of the big finale of the season then, was it?
Yeah, but if it was Brands Hatch GP as opposed to Brands Hatch Indy, because I think we did Indy at the start of the season and then GP at the very end, and that was a good weekend.
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
Now, obviously, you get near all the cars, and the sounds must be amazing. Does that Aston Martin sound as good in real life as it does on the sims?
Yes, the best bit about the Aston, which you won't get on a sim, is the run-ups that we do in the morning. Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning. One of the first things that the crew and engineers need to do is run up the car and do a systems check. And so you fire it up, you leave it on the cold sort of burble for a bit, which is it's all right. You get used to that. But it's when you're doing the flat shifting through the box about midway through the run-up. That's when you get the bangs in the garage, and then obviously because you're reverberating around the garage, that's one of the best ones. Although the Bentleys, you don't get this on the Sims, where the Bentleys seem to have some form of interesting oil feature that means that if you're in the garage next to a Bentley, you sort of get intoxicated by all the gearbox or some turbo fumes that come over. It's horrible.
Oh, goodness me. You wouldn't expect that from a Bentley, innit? You'd expect it, maybe a bit of petrol fumes, whereas it's burning the fuel, but not anything.
The garage every time with a blue puff of smoke. It's quite amusing.
Yeah, that's the thing. And have you ever, obviously you don't actually drive the cars yourself, but have you ever kind of had a chance to have a go in anything like that, or are they too wary of even letting you get near it?
Closest thing I came was I raced my own kart for a while, but I haven't. I'm the same as everyone else, where I race on a sim, dreaming of doing the real cars, but I've never raced any of the real cars I work on. I very much rely on the drivers. Although when I'm telling a driver to go faster, I'll pretend as if I've sort of been in it.
Right, come on, you're missing your apexes. That's it.
It's easy. What are you talking about?
That's the way to do it. So, what would you say has been one of your biggest challenges this year in all of your motorsport work?
It's got to be the fatigue that you get towards the end of a weekend, or the end of the season. So the fatigue, just the literal fatigue of the hours you work while you're trackside, that's quite brutal. Or it's the adapting to every time you go to a new, so obviously going between the teams, between the different cars, you need to remember the different techniques. So actually, that's probably tops of fatigue was the front wheel drive, rear wheel drive. The Minis are front wheel drive, Aston's rear wheel drive, and you have completely different dynamics and driving styles based around them, which was quite hard to flip flop between sort of on back to back weekends. But yeah, it's I think it's been the lots of different bits, but we like a challenge, I think.
Because that's the thing. I mean, the British GT Championship, imagine it's quite a busy field, as well as the mini challenge. So it's kind of getting used to all those different cars, and that some of these racetracks as well. The pit garages are all quite small.
Yes,
and they're not. So how do you find coping with all of that? Because it's, if you don't have much room to work,
it's that's quite fun. So I mean, we range from, I think Snett or Alton's probably the smallest garage that we go to on the British GT, because we're not blessed with Croft or Knockhill. And then the biggest garage we go to is Spa and Silverstone, and Spa's like a monolith of a
it's huge, isn't it? Absolutely massive.
It's big, but Spa's lovely. So the difference is at Spa you have room to sort of stretch your legs and sort of move your chair back from your desk, whereas at Snetterton you're right next to the coffee machine.
Don't move, you might scold yourself. It's that kind of thing. Oh, that's fantastic. Now we've got lots of people at the moment in the chat. So I'm going to say to everyone watching, if you would like to ask Will a question, this is your chance. Just make sure you put it in capitals, and I'll be able to read it out for you. And I can even now put it on the screen as well, so that you can see the kind of questions that will be coming through. And we said that now Jerry, who was watching the BTCC, and he was saying that the Mini Challenge supports that calendar as well. So what's been the kind of the most hilarious moments that you've seen? Especially, imagine with the Minis, because you were saying earlier, there's been quite a lot of action, quite a lot of cars ending up on their roofs.
Oh yeah, it was one of those. I think we had one at Knockhill, two at Alton. I'm not sure they're hilarious moments, but they're certainly moments you don't forget. Hilarious moments. I don't know.
So there's not been a big driver battle when they've done everything they can.
Yeah, there's been some weird and wonderful interactions between various drivers at various different meetings. That's always quite amusing to watch, but stay well clear of that. It's a good. That's one thing about trackside and guys that work trackside. It's sort of one big family that has good. Everyone's has good banter with each other, and it's very. You need to learn to work as part of a team, because the fatigue sets in. People obviously get tired. And they start to get cranky, but it's all about making sure that everyone gets on with each other. So the whole season's are good. You're laughing the whole way through in terms of just having fun with the guys you're with, and that leads to some of the results you get.
Yeah, absolutely. Now here's the first question from Rue. He says, what is Will's preferred job? The techie stuff in the wind tunnel or trackside?
Trackside. I think there's different preferences everyone has, but mine is trackside. There is nothing like going to a track at 6, 7 in the morning and just being in the environment. It doesn't matter what time everything happens. It happens, and you move on with the day. The day is very fast paced. There are moments that you can find yourself at a bit of a loose end, especially with the sort of trackside calendar, the timetables you get. You can have it where your qualifying's at 9 in the morning, but your race one's not till 4 p.m, which gives you quite a lot of time as an engineer. But it's certainly trackside. Yeah.
And Lou has gone on to say, how often do you just hit it with a hammer? As he said.
Yes, I think luckily the Minis you don't often try and hit with a hammer, although you obviously witness some interesting repairs in my time. The British GT is definitely the interesting thing about being on the touring cars and being on the British GT paddock is that in the touring car, certainly, car needs to be presentable when it goes out on track. You need to have a technical form filled in for sort of gaffer tape basically over the car, which means that you try and fix it without doing your Ginetta Junior taping of half the bonnet. So it means that quite often they're repairs.
Actually, it looks spick and span, so all is good. There's no allowances for anything like that. That am I allowed?
No, I haven't. No,
you haven't. Oh, that's fine then. That's fine. And I'm going to say, because you're involved in all these different championships, you've met a lot of obviously drivers, and because you work alongside them. So, who have been some of the celebrities or some of the famous drivers that you've met along the way?
Ricardo. He was. So Renault or Alpine.
Yeah, of course.
Pre-COVID and pre Ricardo's departure, I saw him at least twice around the factory, and he's the spitting image of what he is on TV. He's just hilarious to be around, always with the big smile. I'm sure there's points where he's serious in meetings and stuff, but he's exactly like you expect him to be. So he's probably my celebrity claim to fame.
Yeah, he does seem like a really top bloke, actually, doesn't he? He's always doing good stuff. And I remember at the time when he was at Red Bull, and they were doing prizes, and so people they entered this prize, and then they would turn up at the door, and I think they had to give them a lift somewhere or in a car. And at the time, I think it was Infinity, or they had some car, or whatever, and so they would turn up at just a random fan's house and say, "We're here to take you somewhere, to take you to the track or something, or take you along." And so he would drive them along somewhere. But he always seemed like he was genuinely enjoying the kind of fun side of all that kind of media work, that it's quite a thing. But yeah, so we've got some great questions here. And by Jerry, NCF1 says, what is the quickest turnaround time in repairing a smashed up car?
Geez. I mean, cars are tricky because having worked on karts and cars we've had, I mean, at Brands, we're repairing one that went into the wall. So the problem with cars is they're not as quick as karts to repair. Obviously, a lot more bolts, a lot more bits going on. So they tend to be overnight jobbies trying to get bits repaired. We do turn them round between sort of, I said we, the team, turn them round between sort of a crash and an instant and the next race pretty quick. I've seen them turn around within sort of 4 or 5 hours. Engine swaps are often, I saw my fair few this season within sort of 3-4 hours. Big smashes in the British GT. I think there was a couple of teams that were taken out in sort of race 1 of a weekend and didn't make it out to race 2 because they tend to be a bit more complicated to repair. But karts are amazing fun from the point of view that you can see a sort of kart have quite significant damage with an hour, another fresh one with various new parts is back on it, and they're so fast to put back together. But yeah, a couple of hours you can normally have repaired most things unless it's a major shunt. The problem with a car is as soon as you get back to chassis rails and chassis start to take their time. But
you don't want to have to straighten those things out, do you? Or having to
that's an overnight. You can do a lot of that overnight. It takes a lot to write a weekend completely off.
Yeah. Now that's it does sound amazing. I was going to say with the kind of go-karts that you work with as well. What kind of karts are they? Are they like super karts, or are they like Club 100, or what kind of thing?
So the karts I work with, I do a range, or I've worked on a range between the X30 Miami series, so the 2 strokes, the Rotax, which is similar, Honda Cadets, so the sort of 8 to 12 sort of range. I've steered away from the 4-stroke stuff. I've predominantly, and I raced TCAMs myself back. I'm looking at photos now, trying to remember how long ago that was. About 3-4 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it is great because I often watch Super GT and his races when he does his videos and his updates and things. And I mean, I always wait for the go-kart, especially when they drive in the wet and they're still going well over these curves. And you think, they always tell you when you go to a go-kart arrive and drive stay off the curbs, don't do that, because they're so big, and you think, and you wouldn't really want to go over that. But when they race properly, you see that the guys that are quick, they can go over them. Is that what you find when you were doing it as well? You've got to make use of every bit of space you've got.
Yeah, brake discs, they don't survive very well. There's a track in Bolton where you often send a driver out in the wet, and then you go and find the next brake disc. You wait for them to come back in. You're like, right, that's another brake disc on then, because they just smash the curbs, chunks out of the brake disc, and people in the comments will probably say, "Oh, it's a brake disc protector." It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not going to, because I suppose there's nothing to on the other side of it, isn't it? You're just simply mounting it in a car. You've got bodywork, you've got other stuff to surround it, but you don't have anything like that.
Your brake disc pretty exposed. You've got a brake disc protector, but certain curbs will just clip them. So I've seen them go in the wet. I've seen Super GT does Wilton Mills sort of club runs, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I've seen him there a few times because I ran a chap on that grid for certainly the start of this season. He's coming on really well.
Yeah. On talking about that, so if you're doing karting, do you kind of take people on to try and help them get faster, or what's kind of your main role in doing the kind of karting work?
Yeah, so when you're sort of working in karting, you tend to, the way that karting teams are done is you've normally got a team manager overlooking, say, how many karts are in the awning. Then you've got the mechanics working on the karts, and you may have a sort of data engineer checking some bits. But as part of the mechanic role, you're the mechanic on the kart, but you're then the sole point for watching the kart while it's out on track, taking the driver feedback, making the setup changes. Depends on what team you're working in as to how they want to divvy up the responsibility. But my one tends to be focusing, doing the mechanicing, and then focusing on giving the driver some feedback, making the setup changes that between myself, the team manager, and the driver, what we feel's right to do. So that's sort of really back to basics, driver coaching with them, and doing bits like that. And then obviously, as I work different weekends, I'm then doing performance engineering on Aston. So it's
very different, isn't it?
It's amazing the amount of stuff that's the same, to be honest.
Now, because you're around so many different drivers as well, they must have given you some quite good excuses over the time for why something isn't working. Do you have some famous excuses of why they weren't quick enough? Any good ones?
You get some rubbish ones of typically in a practice session you'll always get it's only practice. Like, that's a good one, or that can't be possible when you're showing them data in front of you. So no, that doesn't work. Or blaming the car for something is normally quite a good one. I haven't had, off the top of my head, I haven't had too many funny ones. I think you get used to different drivers of what they sort of say back to you. You have to learn it's a bit of give and take. You have to build some trust with them first, because it's very easy for you to go to them, right, you need to brake later, and they sort of look at you going, you're not driving this, which is a totally legitimate I come back to what I tell them. So you have to build a relationship up with the driver where they get to the point of trusting you, going, okay, right, I'm going through this pragmatically and working out why you can brake later, and I can go through that with you if you really want, but I'll tell you can brake later here, and I go off and do it and go, oh yeah, I can, or I can't, because occasionally we get it wrong. They try
and they're off onto the grass.
One of my favourite ones with one driver is flat through craners.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen. That's what you have to say when you come back at them or something. It was like, so that was last year's data. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, I mean, because I think you've got such a close relationship with them, isn't it? When you hear them on F1, when you hear the engineers talk, they trust them. And then I know, like with Lewis Hamilton, he started just saying, he was challenging them mid-race, which always seems like quite a thing. I suppose he's got his idea of what's happening, and then you know what you're doing. And it's quite a thing to try, and you hope. I know they do trust each other the majority of the time, but they're so competitive, they just don't want to get caught out. So you're kind of dealing with that as well. But we always find that certainly in sim racing it's very different. We have very poor excuses I know for me certainly I can only put up for myself, but I blame mine on not having load cell pedals. That seems to be I can't slow down, or I slowed down but not enough. I didn't expect the corner to be completely blocked, so that was one of the things like that. But yeah, so no, or I blame my OBS streaming software for not being in the right time, and I couldn't hear what was going on, or I was clicking something and it didn't do it when it in real time. But no, it's quite a thing. But what inspired you to go into motorsport? And obviously you've done an engineering degree. Were you always really super keen to be involved in racing?
I think to work through the spiel quickly, I must have. My dad watched Formula One when I was younger, and obviously, therefore, I took to watching Formula One with him. I must have had a radio control car from very, very young, sort of 24 months old, playing with just one of the wired radio control cars. I then, definitely at the age of 11, got my first proper radio control car that was one of the 1/8 rallycross. I can't remember exactly what they call them, buggies. So the nitro powered 0.21 engines, and they were brilliant. So I raced that from sort of 11 to 16. But what was brilliant about them is the amount of setup that you can do on a radio controlled car.
Wow.
To me, you have everything. It's unlimited anti-roll bars, diff settings. Forget camber and caster, you can be changing the pickup points on a radio controlled car without too much effort and without needing to sort of spend millions on R&D development. You just do it and you see what happens. So radio controlled cars are a fantastic gateway into sort of understanding sort of the technical level of setting up a car. I think that sparked the real interest, because at sort of 11, I decided I was going to uni to do motorsport engineering, to the laughs of most of my teachers. And I then did GCSEs, A-levels and university as sort of planned, where I just decided it was exactly what I wanted to do at all costs. And did university. Was very fortunate to then jump straight into Renault F1. I have done then a bit two and a bit, coming up to 3 years at 2.5 years at Renault F1, and then I think the bit that swayed it is in that period of time I'd been karting trackside, I'd done some cars trackside, and the bit that I wasn't getting from Formula One was the trackside stuff, because I was a factory role, so it's I just knew that trackside was what I wanted to be doing, and then sim racing gives you that bug as well, because especially during furlough, it came to a stop, and I was doing the bits with Josh on sim racing, and it just sort of it's like you're like, brilliant, this is like the trackside buzz again, and that really sparked it again. But yeah, I think I've always sort of been geared that way. A lot of my hobbies have revolved around racing, even recently taken up mountain biking, and as much as that's not racing directly, it's very competitive. Although it's not meant to be, you're meant to go out for a laugh. I don't like losing. I often lose.
Although if you fall off, you're going to know about it, isn't it? Because you can fairly scrape yourself or do a bit of damage quite easily.
Yeah,
if you fall off a mountain bike.
You don't need the data to tell me that I've run out of talent for that corner.
So when obviously you go to lots of different tracks, you've been to Spa and all around Britain, what is it that gets you about motorsport? Because a couple of years ago I went to watch the Blancpain Championship at Silverstone, and I saw David Burrell race, and there is a good atmosphere. But what do you find is there something that is especially alluring about turning up to these great race tracks, and what is it that kind of brings, what's the special bit about that?
Spa was this year the first time I went to Spa, and that was when you go around these tracks. I've watched Spa on TV many times for the Grand Prix, and you go to them and they're always beat my expectation from what I expect. Especially I mentioned Spa because I went for a track. I'm a killer or sucker for track walks. So I really want.
That's a long walk. Yeah, that's a long walk. for sure.
I wanted to go on the track walk on the first day that we got there. I was straight out on the track walk as soon as the track opened, as in at the end of the day. And what got me was the undulation. Forget of Eau Rouge and Vadion, the sort of common ones. It's walking around the back section of the track. There's a double left-hander that I can never remember the name of. It's a really steep entry, downhill entry into it, and the double left-hander just falls away from you as you're walking around. And in a sim, I think I'd got the appreciation in the sim that it was flat with maybe a bit of slope, but you go to them in real life and you're like, wow, these are cool.
Yeah.
These are real features. Makes Silverstone look very boring and flat. But yeah, the tracks are just amazing. I always get a buzz going to them. And it's I think someone said poo on that.
Yeah, it might be that. Is that it's the one that they go down and they kind of back off a little bit.
Yeah,
it is dodgy. The car tends to always go out wide quite easily.
Saying that, if anyone wants to find British GT from this year, our driver did a fantastic overtake around the outside of the McLaren for the lead. That was good. But yeah, the bit that gets you to tracks, I feel you have to be somewhat geared towards enjoying it. But I just love the atmosphere you get when you're at a track. You sort of walk up and down a paddock and you'll know a few people. Certainly after a couple of years of doing it, you start to know a few people, and you're always popping your head and going, oh, how are you getting on? And it's the behind the scenes bits that I think you can see more now. I'm getting the impression from especially with the touring cars doing the reverse garages, where you can see the real nitty gritty that goes on outside of the boarding in the garage. That's the enjoyment.
Yeah, and I take it you've got two cars. Is it in each team, or is it just one car in the mini challenge, or how does it all work?
So in the mini challenge, we had 5 or 6 cars in the team, and then there was two. There was a team manager, then a head of engineering, and then 2 engineers split between the 6 cars. So 2 data engineers / performance engineers between the 6 cars. So I had 3 drivers for the minis, and then in the British GT we just had the one. So I was on the one car that we had as a team. So it's weird. You went from the British GT that you had 10-ish guys working on one car to the minis where you had sort of 1 or 2 people working on one car, and a lot of you split between a few cars. Brilliant, because I got to work with 3 different drivers with 3 different styles with 3 different setups that would learn off each other, would be good friends off the track, and that they were very close in pace on the track, and was fortunate to do well with them throughout the season. And it's quite nice having I do enjoy having a few different drivers across a weekend. It gives you a bit more flavour for people trying different things with cars. If you've got one driver, they tend to want to do the same thing with the car, or go in the same direction. If you've got some different ones, it gives you a bit more sort of variety, and you can try a few different things. And certainly if they're getting on well, you can use one driver to try something radical out on, while the other 2 are sort of running on the baseline stuff.
No, that's fantastic. Now, one of the questions we got was, did you ever have to mediate between 2 drivers? Now, I wasn't sure how many drivers at first you had in the team. So you've got 3 that you were looking after. Have you ever had a situation where 2 of them have been involved in an accident, and you've had to deal with what happens afterwards?
I think karting's the best and worst for having to mediate, but the cars are our team going into the final round had the P1 and P2 in the championship, who were fighting nearly exclusively for the championship. There's a couple of other mathematical contenders, certainly not for the final race, but it meant that I was the engineer for one of the cars, and my friend was engineering the other car. But the drivers were extremely professional the whole way through. They did a really good job at never falling out with each other, never being very extremely professional all the way to the end, and even once the result had been decided. Karting is brilliant because the difference in cars to karting is you get 30 very pumped up drivers all pulling into the assembly area or the area at the end of the race. Forgive the fact, I can never remember these terms. And
is it Park Ferme or something? Park
yeah,
Ferme?
Park Ferme, that's it. And they pull into Park Ferme, and that's hilarious because if one driver's had a twang with another, they will go and find them because it's very easy in 30 carts to find that driver. And then they'll start pointing fingers.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, I had a famous moment with my friend Jonathan, who's been asking all these funny questions there as well. In Lanzarote back in 1993, we went there for a holiday, and we went up to this amazing go-kart track that was in the volcano. Basically, it was just on the hill, and it was this great racetrack. And we had a big coming together, and he still blames me. He said I cut him off. And the thing was, I didn't hear a thing. I did hear the sound of somebody braking, to be fair. And then I just continued on up the hill and went round. And when I got round to the same corner on the next lap, there was Jonathan waving his fists at me and saying, "What have you done?" Standing away from his go-kart. So he was not happy. And afterwards, he didn't talk to me at lunchtime or anything after the meal for a couple of days. It was quite something. But it was a bit of a laugh doing all of that. And at that time, we saw what we still think today is possibly Lewis Hamilton, because he's about 10 years younger than me, and I'd have been about 18 at the time. And there was someone who looked just like him who was practicing racing at this go-kart track in Lanzarote. And I thought there can't be many people who look like Lewis in doing go-karting anywhere, really, the whole thing. So to be there, and he would have been about eight or so, and of course, and he was there with a few other people, and he drove on our track as we were having a go, and he just drove away from us. But so I don't. I mean, it may not have been him, but it certainly looked. When I look at the pictures now, I think, it must have been. It can't have been too many folk, that could match that. So, and I remember he signalled to me to kind of stay to watch his lines and to kind of follow him. But I was nowhere near. I was 18, and I thought I could do this myself. I don't need to follow some 8-year-old. That's that kind of like thing. And how wrong I was. But there, in fact, now Jonathan has said he's rearranged my question, deflecting the question away from his guilt. He says, "General Melchett would have been a great steward. Bring in the guilty driver." So it's and then they're saying, "Did I cause the crash?" Well, perhaps I may have done, but I don't know. I think it was one of these mutual when both caused it all. But no, that's the thing. So, what makes you the most kind of nervous? What's the most nervous part of a race weekend? Is it when they on the grid waiting to go, or are the worst parts than that?
The worst part is once the driver's gone. So when they're so with the minis, when you're in a support sort of paddock for the main series, you go over to the dummy grid and you're standing with the driver, and that I don't mind that so much. I can sort of pop around, chat with my drivers, check all okay, make sure the GoPros are working, bits like that. Any final bits you want to say to them, and then they pop off, and then you're like, okay, they've gone now. Then you you go stand on the grid, and they go for their green flag lap, and you're like, yeah, this is. I noticed my sort of stress level increasing then, and then it's when they get on the pull to the line for the green flag start for the race, and you just that's the most stressful bit because you're like, oh god, here we go. Did I tell them all the right advice for turn one? But no, you have no control at that point over what's going on. The British GT is a little bit different because you have a rolling grid, and you're in comms with the driver. So more like Formula One, it's a little bit different. That doesn't feel that the bit that gets quite nervous for me in the British GT weekends is a pit stop, because I was the lollipop guy on the front of the car. So I had the whole team does an amazing job during the pit stops. I couldn't imagine doing some of the other jobs. They scare the life out of me. But one of the responsibilities I had is you flag the driver coming in, which is fine. You try not get run over yourself, which proves to be more difficult occasionally than you thought. You stop in the box, and then you have a mandated pit stop time. So it's not like Formula One. I can't just sort of release when ready. You have to wait, but sometimes that can be quite tight. And then you have to release them into the traffic, and it's a releasing them into the traffic that you're always like, oh, because you expect him to pull away instantly. If you pull away quite as you expect, and you've got someone in the fast lane, you're like, please don't door him. That's expensive. So that's really good fun though. But you've got guys on the fuel. I can't. guys on the fuel, guys on the tyres, and drivers have to jump in and out at that point. I find that in those weekends is the most stressful, but at the end of it, it's one of the best feelings, especially because you've had an impact on the race at that point. You are part of the race. And we have overtaken sort of people in the pits, and we've also had disaster of pit stops. So I know what it feels both ways. Not quite Formula 1 3 seconds. I think we're mandated to sort of be in the pit lane for 2 minutes.
All right. Yes, it's quite a lot.
It's quite a lot, but when it sounds like a lot, but when you've only got sort of an impact gun, five stud wheel nuts, and sort of 80 litres of fuel that isn't pressurized to go in, it quickly disappears.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to say, because if you're doing like driver changes as well, do you ever, I mean, because obviously a race seat doesn't really move, does it? I mean, that's, once it's in, do you have to kind of unbolt it to, or, somebody's a different height and different build? How does that all work? Because surely that will take a bit of time.
Technical cushion. If you ever watch a British GT pit stop, you'll occasionally notice sort of a black object about cushion size disappearing from the cockpit to somewhere in the garage, because you sort of they throw it out, or vice versa if they're sort of carrying it over, depending on which way round it's going, and it's a technical cushion. So you'll have your bigger driver of the two will sort of take preference, and then the of the seat size, and the smaller driver will have his padding. Equally, the steering racks do move in them, so we'll sort of switch to another position. But it is a compromise. That's another thing about the British GT, just it's a different beast, because you've got two drivers that naturally want the car slightly different, especially when you've got a pro and an am, but you've got to compromise. So the seating position is one of the many compromises, but setup's a different one, and sort of luckily the preference on who goes out first and second during a race is predefined by the fact they're pro and an am and the way that the series work. But who goes out first in practice is sort of that's all quite fun.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. No, it does sound great. So where would you like to see your kind of career go forward to? What would be your kind of ideal working situation there in motorsport?
It's definitely, I want to go towards doing more endurance GT racing, and specifically I want to now I said want to now I would like to in the future be a race engineer at Le Mans is the next goal. What class, whether it be sort of LMP2 or GTs, I'm not so worried, but that's where I would like to work my way towards. So at the moment I'm subject to various bits, hopefully race engineering a GT car in the British GT next year or other, and then we'll see. So that's a step in the right direction, and then see where it goes after that. Really, it's but hopefully in the next sort of 5 years I wouldn't mind doing Le Mans. I think that's the goal next, but in between that, I mean, I know there's sort of flagship events like the 24-hour of Dubai, 24-hour of Spa I'd like to do. Lots of events like that. So I would like to go tick around some sort of goals. Yeah,
some great circuits, aren't there? And is that Dubai Autodrome? Is that, did they do it there, is it? Yeah, that looks like quite a good track. I love the Abu Dhabi track. I'm quite interested to see how that's going to go with a new layout as well. And there's great circuits, I suppose, like Monaco. I managed to drag my kids there and my family. We went over to France for my mother's 70th birthday a few years back. But we did a day trip from the south of France, from Nice, on the underground on the train to into Monaco. And we had a great. I made my kids and the whole family walk around the whole track, and they all did the whole thing. And it was great. There's just something about Monaco. Is that somewhere you've been?
I haven't been. I can't. Do you know what? I don't think I don't have a burning desire to race there or be working as an engineer there either. I think it's fantastic, but I mean, there's better races.
There's no room, is it? That's the thing. There's no room. That's probably the biggest problem. Although I think the historic Grand Prix looks amazing, because then they have all those incredible cars, and that looks a great race. And we were there just after they took everything, or they were in the process of taking everything down. It was towards the end of June when we went. But it's the atmosphere, because the place is incredible. And you just think how many famous people have walked these streets, and you walk along the start-finish straight, and you can see the grid still painted on the road, you know. So I took a video, I got down on my knees and I just kind of tried to get it down to driver level to see what they would see as you go down the street, you know. But it's an amazing place. Is there any particular track as well, like far away, that you would like to go and visit other than Dubai and Spa?
I'd like to tick off some of the European circuits. I want to do Zandvoort. That looks good fun. A random one. Montreal has always been a sort of bucket circuit. I know that not many GT races going up there, but wouldn't mind going to Montreal. I think that's a fantastic circuit. I mean, Melbourne would be awesome to go to, but again, that's bespoke one. But yeah, some of the European circuits. I haven't actually done Barcelona yet. That would be good fun. But in terms of the UK, I've done most of the UK major circuits. I haven't done Anglesey is about the only one that I haven't been to that I'd like to go and go. I've heard everyone talk about Anglesey, and I've not been for a test day yet. So that's one I'd like to go to.
Yeah, because that's right. That's one of my admin's Rue. He's not too far away from Anglesey. Yeah. He's in Wales, so it's he'll definitely tell you what's been. I think he may well have been there. He says he has been there. So no, it is quite a thing. There's so many amazing tracks all over the world now. Yeah. It's this and the ones you see historically as well that make you think, oh, I'd love to do that. But would you ever consider a kind of top engineer job back again in F1 if you had a chance? Would that be something you maybe look at if it ever came up?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't get me wrong, trackside in Formula 1 is probably amazing. I can't comment. Obviously, I was factoring Formula 1, but I would love to do it at some point. But right now, the desire to do GT racing is definitely great. The endurance, it's the more than 2 hour races, proper endurance racing that I like. So I've 6, 12, 24. Just that is definitely on the bucket list. I'm sure roll on a few 24-hour races and I will go, 2 hours is fine.
Exactly, that's the thing. So where can people find you if they're looking for you in racing? I mean, obviously you're doing all the engineering work, but if they want to kind of come along and support the championships, where's the best place to kind of catch you during the year?
Any circuit in the UK, the touring car weekends or British GT weekends, subject to clashes. You tend to find the paddocks are normally quite open now. So certainly the minis, you can walk outside you can walk outside the front of the awnings now. I think you've always been able to do that and sort of wave hello, and that way. Occasionally you'll catch the rarer spotted sight of an engineer outside of the truck. So to people in the British GT weekends, we're in the back of the garages, so we don't have a data truck in the team. Some of the teams that have really fancy sort of trucks that have got offices inside them that they go and bury themselves away in, but we're just on some tables out the back of the garage. Means we are quite easy to spot. We tend to always in the pit lane sort of area or in the paddock area, and just normally milling about. We are normally hiding away behind a laptop.
And you'll be used to all this racetrack food as well, isn't it? Which is usually is it a caravan or are you fortunate enough to get catering in to help you?
We're very fortunate. The minis, we sort of bring our own stuff at the weekends and go out for an evening meal. That's really good. I tend to eat rabbit food on a weekend. I try and keep the fitness up. I go for a run in the morning and then rabbit food during the day, as they like to call it. British GT weekends we're catered, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, I suppose you need plenty of energy.
It's right above the bus stop chicane. That was a good spot to sit at.
Oh wow, that would be pretty good, isn't it? Because it was quite funny when I went to the Blancpain race, and I'd won an actual thing by Renault to go to it. So I was in their kind of area for hospitality, and then they said, "Oh, you go and have lunch in our tent." So I went across, and all these other, you had team obviously team personnel, and it was like in a small buffet. And of course, I went to the buffet and I helped myself a few times because they said, well, there you are, you can have it. But I must have eaten probably more than everyone else on the entire table because they all have tiny amounts, because they don't want to be feeling. I was quite fortunate. I was one of the guests, so I could relax, and I didn't have anything to worry about. But I could see all these people were all kind of quite stressed and quite they take it so seriously. Otherwise, when you have to, because it's such an important racing for so many of them, isn't it? So that's the thing. But what would you like to say? We've got our community here of people watching. What would be, if they wanted to get involved in engineering and into the kind of motorsport like what you're doing, what would you say is the best way to start?
Volunteering on race weekends is definitely a good start, or just getting involved in race weekend stuff. So alongside whatever job you're doing or studying you're doing, just getting involved. Anything from sort of being a number 2 techie through to sort of tyre assistant, or if you're fortunate enough jumping in as sort of a data engineer in a sort of more junior series, and you just got to get involved. I think you just need to build up experience. Definitely an element of fortune needs to be on your side. A lot of teams get a lot of people asking to help, and you definitely need to be right place, right time for some of the things to work out. But you just got to get yourself involved. Read, depending on your background, reading up on various different bits to do with race cars is definitely a bonus. But it's just getting involved. That's the key thing, is being there, because if you're within the team, you've got a much better chance of getting that role that you want than being in it than being outside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the thing. One of my friends, John, has said here, so regarding Sophia Flush, says all I had was a dream and 14 million euros. I think there is that thing, because we were looking at some of the drivers coming through Formula W, and you do wonder the amount of money that the parents must have had to pay to get them on these racing, I suppose, different championships, getting them up there. And some of them have gone on doing extremely well. I think Jimmy Chadwick's done an amazing job to win that twice now in the Formula W Championship. But it is motorsport. It's not cheap, that's for sure, isn't it? It is, and even now it'll be even more expensive with inflation and everything else. It's going to be something. But this is the question I was remembered. With your kind of F1 experience, what do you think is going to happen next in terms of engines? Do you have any idea of what they might come out with?
Not other than the spiel that came out from that 2025, wanting to be more economical with different fuels. I don't know. It feels a bit behind the curve at the moment.
So I had rumours of 3-cylinder engines, which I think would be quite interesting, because at least you'd have a high rev range. You would have an amazing rev range.
It'd be brilliant, because then my Suzuki Swift would be a Formula 1 car, because at the moment it's missing 3 cylinders because it's a hybrid turbo.
All right, yeah.
So all for that, because then I can sell it off as an F1 inspired.
Yeah, that's it. You may as well do what you can. That'll go on eBay,
Well, it's got to do something to bring it more in line with the government's want to electrify. But I think it's doing one thing. It's really undersold, the fact that they're only using the amount of fuel they're using with a 6-cylinder engine, pushing out the best part of 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't quite understand that
the technology that's involved. I mean, that's what makes me. I'm not a big electric fan, only because I just think they're quite expensive in terms of the sustainability of what goes into building one is the issue. And I think maybe the hydrogen type, they're saying that they can now potentially do is a compressed natural gas, or it's a hydrogen that can actually use a normal combustion engine. And I think that might be maybe a better way, because at the end of the day, technology has to be better than what it replaces to really make it work. And I think at the moment, electric cars are very expensive, and they don't actually do what you hope. If you have an average diesel car, it'll do 500, 600 miles to a tank. But an electric car might do 250, and you're going to pay 50 grand for it. So that's got to kind of come forward a long way, and also the way how they build it, I think. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, isn't it, how F1 adapts to it all. I mean, I love the V8 engines. They were just the most incredible sounding cars when they used to get the old V8s, weren't they? And I remember seeing testing, and they would do the practice runs to the grid, and then they would just bang the car off the rev limiter as they came to the grid, and that was just the best sound you could ever hear, But it's certainly quite a thing. Now I've got a quick question here as well. How much is it to race a Mini for a year? And he says, will my furlough money cover it?
To be honest, I don't get involved in how much it costs, other than it's going to be in the sort of tens of thousands to, I think, a good budget to race in it. You're going to be wanting at least 100,000, I'd have thought, to do a season, but I can't comment on the actual finances. I try and keep myself distance from that type of thing, but I mean, British GT, I'm well aware that you could probably go and find a seat somewhere between the 160 to 300,000, but none of those figures are including crash damage, insurance and bits like that. It's definitely still a rich man / woman's game, but it's becoming more accessible. I think I'm lying if I say that. Becoming more accessible. It's I think sim racing is a really good gateway. I've certainly started to see some successful sim racers, Jimmy Broadbent being one. Obviously racing the Praga this year. You've got Super GT and karting. You're noticing a few more sim racers. I think Brendan Lee managed to jump in a car for a bit. They are getting there with some of the sort of schemes to get guys that don't necessarily have big budgets behind them into racing, but at the end of the day, racing costs money. But then you can't judge them all like with the same statement of they've come from wealth or anything, because if you speak to a lot of the guys work really hard. They work full time. They attract their sponsors by doing the graft. So it certainly is it's an expensive hobby, but it's
I think that's it. It's probably the majority have to work really, really hard to get there. You do get the odd few that have the rich parents that can afford to do it. So, or something to help them on their way. But as you say, it's you've got to have talent to have a chance to drive these cars, isn't it? And keep them on the track and do well and get the kind of results that are required to kind of keep you going and move you on. Now, in closing, say, I know you're doing some sim racing work, and is it potentially some sim coaching work? Did you say you might be doing? Yes. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you to learn how to drive faster, what do they need to do?
Oh, that's a good question. I need to sort that out, don't I? I tend to do everything through word of mouth at the moment. I'm sure, to be honest, it's going to be finding me through either LinkedIn or Facebook, or I will have a website going up soon. It's going to be sort of World Annual Performance Engineering. It's going to be what it's under. But to be honest, I'll have to send you some details. That would
be great. We'll put them on our website for you. We'll put them on our YouTube links as well, on our description for you. But that was the thing that you see. I know there was somebody who put in a comment about me. I think it was Rue, actually. It says here, going back to the food that we were eating in Formula One, and he's called me the KFC champion. Because that's what I would be. That's what I would be eating if that was the case. But they don't do, unfortunately. That most racetracks, I don't think I've ever seen a KFC stand or lorry at any of the things that what we've had. But no, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you on the show tonight, and just to get an idea of what it's like to work in the field of real motorsport. And obviously, as you're doing into sim racing as well, because all of our guys here in the community, we love sim racing, but we also like to know what it's like to have the real kind of pulse of being when it's raining on a bank holiday weekend, and you're out there at 6 a.m. doing your practice or whatever it might be at Brands Hatch or Spa. It must be quite exciting, and we wish you all the best for next year. In fact, when do you start? When's the first race of 2022 for you?
At the moment, it's the Easter bank holiday weekend at Alton with the British GTs. That's at the moment the first one on the calendar.
Oh well, so you've got a little bit of time.
A little bit of rest. That will be the first car race anyway. Karting will start in January.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, stay on the line just now, but I'll bring the show to a close. But it's been an absolute privilege, Will, to have you on the show and to get an update of how well you've done. Your team has won the British GT Championship. It was the
category,
Pro-Am, which is fantastic. I want to be sure I get that one right. You're the mini challenge champions.
Yes.
and this incredible F1 experience and going into sim tutoring as well. What an incredible career. And I'm sure you've worked incredibly hard to get that. So well done. Congratulations. And we wish you all the best for continued success in your motorsport career. But you've been watching the Car Sim and Race Driver Show with Will Daniels, our very special guest. And if you want to come on the show, just give us a shout. You can email us on the website at hughhattrick.com, just fill in the form there, or you can go on our Discord, all of which is linked down below. But as our famous phrase goes, do you know our phrase, Will? Have you watched enough of our shows? Don't worry, nobody ever does. Don't worry. It is drive fast and try not to crash. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner. Take care, everyone, and bye just now.